We have a couple of grapplers entering this fight at featherweight between Darrick Minner and Charles Boston Strong Rosa. And I say grappler, but Charles Rosa's last time out against Kevin Aguilar, that one was at 155 pounds. He was a striker in that fight. And we've seen that out of Charles Rosa in his career. You know, he came in with this base or that base, but really when it boils down to it, he has a weird karate stance. He has decent boxing in that karate stance. He's a little heavy on his lead leg. And as always, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his back pocket. And he's grappled with some of the best. And you look at some of the wins that he has throughout his career. To me, the last one over Aguilar, you know, it's a good name. But the winner that he had over Manny Bermudez pulled guard, thought he was going to be able to get a submission. And out of it, Charles Rosa ended up with an armbar. And I know that sounds weird, but go back and watch that fight. It was an odd one. And an odd one, too, because Bermudez, he missed weight in that one. He didn't look all that great in that one. Like, it just wasn't a good fight for Manny Bermudez. It was a great one for Charles Rosa, who was coming off of an over 2-year layoff since he had fought Shane Burgos and lost that one by finish. He's got a win over fellow Bostonian, Kyle Bochniak. He's got a loss to Yair Rodriguez by split decision. He submitted Sean Soriano. We could go down through the list. Has a decision loss to the man, the myth, the legend, Dennis Seaver as well. But for Charles Rosa, an American top team staple, he's been with the UFC for a very long time. He's a good grappler. He's a decent striker. He gets hit. He'll give one to take one. It's pretty much Charles Rosa in a nutshell. For Darrick Minner, 30 of his 36 pro fights have had a submission in them. Now, he's been submitted and he's submitted some people. And if you look at his UFC tenure, 1-1, he beat TJ Laramie his last time out, and he was a big underdog in that fight, a plus 255 over on best fight odds. And if you look at the fight before that, he was submitted by Grant Dawson in a fight that Grant Dawson, predictably, well, he didn't weigh in where he should have. So for Darrick Minner, submits guys, gets submitted by guys. I mean, I'm looking at the fights that he's lost. He lost to Herbert Burns, Kevin Kroom, Jordan Griffin, Fernando Padilla, Chico Camus, Jesse Arnett, Canadian, by Brabo. And then you look at the wins. He beat Matt Brown, but not that Matt Brown. He beat who? Will Shutt, Justin Overton, Chuka Willis, Joey Munoz, Clay Collard, the boxer. He submitted him in the first round. Darrick Minner has really good setups to his submissions, and he has very good wrestling. And you saw that in the fight against TJ Laramie. I know that was the point that I picked out before that fight, where, again, I'm going to get some wrong, you're going to get some wrong. I had the big underdog in Darrick Minner based on the wrestling, and the inexperience of TJ Laramie was more the thing in that fight, and it ended in the first round by guillotine. But Darrick Minner, really slippery with his grappling. His striking's not the best, and his wrestling defense isn't the best, so we'll see what happens here. It's an interesting pick for a main card fight. I gotta end with that.
It really is. Now, I'm gonna agree with some of the things you said on Darrick Minner. By the end, you got a little hot and heavy on how good Darrick Minner was. Let's be honest. Minner will get out wrestled by good wrestlers. Grant Dawson was easily able to do it. Now, you can bring up the fact that, oh, well, he missed weight. Grant Dawson still absolutely dominated him in that fight. Now, the thing
good prospect.
The thing you have to bring up about that fight, though, is that Charles Rosa, we'll talk about his grappling, how good his jiu-jitsu is. His wrestling is nowhere near the level of Grant Dawson. And for Grant Dawson, it's really his top control and his top pressure is where he gets most of his grappling success from. For Rosa, honestly, it's the opposite. If you go for the takedowns on him, he will find success off of his back, but it is sort of that Louis Smolka deal where Rosa will waste time off of his back, sometimes going for submissions. And that was a big problem in the Bryce Mitchell fight. Because Bryce Mitchell, yes, he's a phenomenal grappler. We all know how he almost twisted Charles Rosa about 9 times in that fight.
30-25s? Like, what a weird fight.
He just completely dominated him. But again, Charles Rosa, he won't have trouble with the jiu-jitsu guys. He struggles with guys who can out-wrestle him who also have decent jiu-jitsu. Because if you have that good top pressure, but also good trickiness with your submissions, like Darrick Minner has, you can kind of override the mind of Charles Rosa. Because with Charles Rosa, unless he does have you in that set submission, you can out-scramble him to a certain degree. And again, we saw that with Bryce Mitchell. And with Bryce Mitchell, you have to understand, scrambling a Bryce Mitchell are like scrambling a Ray Borg. It is the main point of their game. So of course, he's going to be really good at it. But Darrick Minner can follow a very similar game plan in this fight. And for Rosa, I do think the striking will be his best path to victory. He does have that really nice karate style, and it's weird because he will get chopped up with leg kicks, but they don't seem to bother him. He does have a really good poker face, and the only way I can make it similar is him and Wonder Boy are similar where guys will target their legs constantly. They know they've got the karate stance. They do target their legs, but neither guy ever seems to be overly affected by it. And I understand that's not the best way to go about fighting. If someone's kicking your leg, please, by all means, check it. But if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you. Just a weird fact. I like Darrick Minner in this fight, and I like his pressure a lot for Charles Rosa, because for Rosa, it's odd. I like his boxing, I like his karate style. He doesn't have any great attacks that can really earn the respect of Minner on the feet, because for Rosa, it is more of that, I'm going to out-volume you game, and it's less of, I'm going to crack you with that one big shot, then I'll go for the takedown, and maybe I'll get a submission that way. So for Rosa, if he is on his bike using his movement well at the start of the fight, he might be able to pull out a decision, because we know how good his cardio is, and he can keep a solid output throughout 3 rounds. But I do think the wrestling of Darrick Minner is such an X factor that Charles Rosa is really going to struggle with.
And we've seen Charles Rosa go for takedowns of his own right. I mean, again, you can't really look too much into it for Darrick Minner. 3 fights under somewhat of a UFC banner. The one on Contender Series, he got finished by Herbert Burns. The one in the UFC in his debut, he got finished by Grant Dawson. Again, he looked great against TJ Laramie, but even still, limited sample size in a prospect that didn't have a lot of experience. I know going into that fight, Laramie was 12-3, but if you went back and watched it, he was dominant in certain fights, but it was against the fighters you would want him to beat. So take everything with a grain of salt there. But if you look at Darrick Minner, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. Usually it ends in a submission. For Charles Rosa, he can submit people in his own right too. And again, we talked about the boxing. Negative strike differential for Charles Rosa in the UFC. Don't necessarily love that. Don't really love the strike defense of 49%. Don't really love the fact that his takedown defense is 49%. And his submission average per 15 minutes is 0.9. We have a good sample size on Charles Rosa in the UFC. Now, again, had a long layoff. He's had certain fights that, haven't been like the others. And I would say, a fight against Yair Rodriguez isn't going to be like a fight against Bryce Mitchell. So you got to take the 2 extremes for what they're worth. For Darrick Minner, you talked about it. The good wrestling, the good offensive wrestling. And for Rosa, you look at it too. I mean, he has a fight of the night against Dennis Seaver, a fight of the night against Yair Rodriguez, a fight of the night against Shane Burgos, and a performance of the night for himself against Manny Bermudez. So 4 performance bonuses for him. You got to love that chunk of change if you're Charles Rosa. He's been down in Florida for a very long time. For Darrick Minner, represents a gym that we just hear more and more and more often. He's a Glory Fitness and MMA guy, or MMA and fitness. I get the 2 mixed up. But he's been there for some time. And you talk about the level of training partner there. We said Zach Cummings. We said James Krause. But we saw somebody last weekend pick up a really big one at that gym in Mr. MC, because he has to shave his chest, Julian Marquez. So a big win for him. Darrick Minner also representing that gym. So Matt, let's have a look at the odds. You had Charles Rosa open a -145 favorite, now -189. For Darrick Minner, opened a +125. He's somewhere around a +156. If we look at the Topology votes, 816 of them, 84% Rosa, 39% by decision, 52% by submission. The small amount, the 16% that picked Darrick Minner to win, 48% by submission, 41% by decision. It seems to me like you leaned one way in your analysis, so what are you thinking here?
Listen, I like Minner in this fight. Charles Rosa is going to have opportunities to win this, though, and that's why I'm not putting any money on this. Like, I would steer clear of this fight because Rosa is so good off of his back, and it's not like Minner can't get submitted. The difference is, though, when you look at who has been able to submit Darrick Minner, it's Herbert Burns. It is the upper echelon grapplers in this division, so I wouldn't really worry too much about him, especially on top of Rosa. I think the opportunity might be there for Rosa if he is able to grab an arm, if he is able to maybe lock up a triangle, but unless he is able to get, and I'm going to use the term Hail Mary, but unless he is able to get a submission off his back, I just don't see it for Rosa in this one. He could win this if he is able to keep it on the feet. Maybe he can out-volume his way to a decision, but I see it more likely than not just being a Darrick Minner going out there, out-wrestling Charles Rosa, maybe passing guard here or there, but just fighting sort of a conservative fight on the ground.
The thing that makes it tricky for me, especially if you're focusing on the guy, and I'm hopefully, somebody's going to correct me here, but I'm 95% sure it's Peabody. He's from Peabody, outside of Boston. It's not Peabody. You had Joe Martinez saying it that way. It's Peabody. You look at the fight that Charles Rosa had with Kevin Aguilar. Very close fight again. Split decision. If you look at the amount of takedowns, Aguilar went 0 of 2. Kevin Aguilar is a good wrestler. Charles Rosa was up a weight class taking on a guy like that. So I like Rosa's striking. I'm all right with the takedown defense. I like that fight against Aguilar, up a weight class. I like him in this fight. Again, I talked about it. Negative strike differential. Maybe I don't love his striking defense, but it's not like Darrick Minner is the best boxer that's out there or that this world has seen at featherweight. So I am going to side with Boston Strong in Peabody's own Charles Rosa. Mike Heck's going to have to let us know if we were right there. Friend of the show. So I'm going to go with Rosa. You're going to go with Minner. But overall, a weird fight at featherweight, and it wouldn't make it onto my card whatsoever. No. So I'm really looking forward to this one. We got a great main card. Even ahead of this still, your co-main event, Ketlin Vieira taking on Yana Kunitskaya. And in our main event, Curtis Blaydes taking on Derek Lewis. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, Matt, let's get into it.